I know the title says they offered me a job, but if you're just here to find out the answer, then yes, I took a job at Gamefound. Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and this video is going to have a lot to talk about. This video is going to have a lot of different conversations, different points to hit. There's a lot of things to cover, and there's no right order because I want to kind of hit all those points of information off the bat up front, and so we'll have to figure it out. But there will be timestamps to all the various sections down below to any particular thing you're interested in jumping into. But as a starting baseline to everything, this is the continuing saga and story of my life as it evolves from 3 years ago, jumping onto YouTube and holding up a camera and just talking about the games in this basement, the same basement that video was done in, although we have added 3 or 4 Calyx shelves to it since then. But the ongoing saga of my life from there to leaving my last job to slowly shutting down Board Game Co., the retail operation I ran, to now apparently taking a job as CMO of Gamefound, their Chief Marketing Officer. There's a lot going on here, a lot of things to cover, like I said already, a lot of different points. But Gamefound, for those who are not aware, Gamefound is a bunch of things. It's a pledge manager, but it's also a crowdfunding platform as well now. And I am now going to be working with them. We'll talk more about Gamefound and their history at some point in this video, or their brief history, but I'm now working for them as their CMO with the general goal, and we'll talk more about this as well, with their general goal of helping establish them as the go-to crowdfunding platform, a goal and a mission that they're well on their way to and have been since they hit this space. And I'm walking into this uniquely situated, or at least I think fairly uniquely situated, in terms of the areas, in terms of what Gamefound's trying to do, what they're looking to do, in terms of the background I currently have, a background that has had a hand for the past several years in 2 different worlds. For the past 3 years, I've been extensively talking about crowdfunding campaigns on Kickstarter, on Gamefound, on BackerKit as well now, on all the platforms. I've been heavily invested in the crowdfunding space in many different ways, from research of the projects that are coming up, from conversations about the projects while they're on their actual, while they're actually running at the moment, to conversations to late pledge videos, of giant late pledge videos going over 100+ late pledges in a single video. I do those infrequently. They're a lot of work, but I have been heavily invested in the crowdfunding space in a long time, in the ways I want to see improved, and the features I want to see added, in the differences between different platforms, and any number of different conversations around the space in terms of topical conversations, in terms of conversations about the games themselves. I have been heavily invested in the crowdfunding space. But also, for the past 10 years, I've also had a hand in the corporate world. And for the past 4 years, I've been COO, Chief Operating Officer of my last company before I left that company. Not my last company, the company I worked for before I left there. And so that means I'm also walking into this with not just a degree of experience with crowdfunding, but a degree of experience in the corporate world. In anything from meetings, as tedious as they can be at times, to task management, to managing people, to managing softwares and programs and operations in any number of different ways. And that does mean I'm walking into this position not just as a YouTuber with a few years of experience of talking about YouTube stuff, but with a hand in both worlds. And it's that experience and background that has made me interested in this position, because again, we'll talk about different things that I've been doing or will be doing and all that, but I am only interested in this if I can actually add value, if I can actually make a difference to Gamefound, to the crowdfunding space in general. At the end of the day, let's talk about what I'll be doing for Gamefound. I'm walking in as Gamefound's CMO. I'm walking in as the Chief Marketing Officer with the general goal, with the general idea of trying to grow Gamefound more than it already has done in the fairly short time that it's been on crowdfunding. My goal is to walk in and help grow the platform, to talk to creators, to see what they need, what features they're looking for, how to bring them onto Gamefound, and to have them use Gamefound as their platform of choice. To talk to backers to see what features they're looking for, why do they prefer one platform versus another, to gather their feedback, your feedback, as far as what it is Gamefound can do, how they can do it better, how they can be the go-to crowdfunding platform, and not just, again, they've made huge strides in this in the time they've been here, but there's always more to be done. There's always features to be added, and Gamefound since inception has been adding features on a regular basis. Both front-end features that backers can see, both back-end features that the creators can see, ways to establish different opportunities and to add value, to help them manage any number of different things that you may or may not be aware of, and to figure out just how to become the best possible platform they can be, with the end goal of having Gamefound be the go-to crowdfunding platform. Not just because we want to get people to go to it, but because we want it to be the best it can be, so that people don't see a reasonable option as to why they shouldn't go to it. That's what they entered the space with, a year plus ago when they started dabbling in the space. I have an interview I did with Marcin. I'll link to that down below in the description. You can check that out. I had an interview that I did with Marcin a while ago when they were entering the space, why they were entering the space, what changes they're hoping to make, with Kickstarter being a behemoth in the space, with Kickstarter being the go-to crowdfunding platform, especially within the range of tabletop projects, which is one of the biggest areas of crowdfunding we have today. And Kickstarter has been the go-to for a long time. And so whenever someone walks into a space, any space, whatever that space is, generally the goal should be to be different or to be better. And I think Gamefound walked in with the goal of being better. And I think they walked in and managed to accomplish a lot of that out the gate, although there's always more left to do. That's going to be part of the stuff we're going to be focusing on for a while, for the next while. Which brings us to you to a degree. If you are a backer, if you are, well, whoever's watching this video, if you are a backer and if you want to see things done differently on Gamefound, if you see features that you want to see implemented, if you see anything that you think could make it a better platform for you, why you don't like it, why you do like it, any of those things, as a starting baseline, apparently with my new role as CMO, the new role within Gamefound, by all means, send me an email if you want. a.radcliffe@gamefound.com. That'll be in the video description as well. In general, I'll probably throw it into the video description as well so that I could be contacted easily. My normal email, alex@boardgameco.com, still present, still available, but if you have something you want to see about Gamefound, if you have a feature you want, if you have anything that in any way is a useful conversational opinion around it, by all means reach out to me. I don't guarantee an answer. I probably won't answer depending on the nature of the conversation, but I will certainly be taking into account because we definitely want to grow this platform and we do want to see how it could be better for you. And the flip side as well, if you are a project creator, if you're someone who's bringing a board game to crowdfunding, part of my role is going to be reaching out to creators, talking with creators, both having a conversation around how we can bring them on the platform, but more importantly, more specifically, how we can make Gamefound the platform that you want to be on. And so similarly for yourself, if you want to reach out, if you want to use Gamefound, if you want to have a conversation, there are many channels you can do so already, but certainly one more channel is reach out to me at a.radcliffe@gamefound.com. I'll be talking to you about what and how we can help and all that stuff. And we'll talk more shortly in this video as well. There are inherently going to be conflicts of interest, and we'll talk later if you want to jump to that timestamp. There's going to be a whole conversation around how we address those, because I have spent the past 3 years talking about board games in the board game space and not shying away from any topic, and this will introduce a degree of conflict of interest that will change some of those things. But we'll get to all of that to make sure those are handled and not really an issue. But my goal is to help Gamefound grow. My goal is to help Gamefound continue to do what it has been doing as much as they possibly can, because they walked in here a while ago with a mission statement, with projects, with features, with all these things, and they have managed to do such an incredible amount in such a short time frame. These are things I'm all publicly on the record for saying already, because I said them already, and that's helpful, because I'm not just jumping in here now being like, hey, Gamefound's the best. No, Gamefound is very, very good. There's ways we can become better, there's ways we can do more, but I've already been fairly impressed with Gamefound well before this opportunity came along. As far as why I'm interested in the job, and because I say this because I wasn't interested in the job, I wasn't looking for a job. I left my last job several months ago, earlier than I had planned on. For a long time now, I've expected to leave my previous job and to work within the board game space full time. YouTube, content creation, all that. I did leave my last job earlier than I planned on, and I was not looking for another opportunity. I was not looking for anything else. I am very, very happy doing what I'm doing. I love being involved in the board game space. I love talking about board games, being able to make an income, being within the board game space, being involved and invested here has been tremendously satisfying in so many ways, and I'm so grateful for that, but it also means I was not looking for a job. Since leaving my last job, I actually turned down 2 other opportunities because I'm not looking for another job. At the same time, something I've said in the past to friends of mine is that there are companies, a handful of companies out there that I respect and value enough, both the people involved, their mission statement, what they're doing, how they're doing it, the company culture. There are a handful of companies all within the board game space that I would entertain a job offer from. Within that list, Gamefound was amongst those companies. There's Gamefound, there's Lucky Duck Games, there's Chip Theory Games, there's Orange Nebula, IV Games, a handful. It's not me fishing for job opportunities, not in the slightest. I just took a job, and I wasn't even looking for that one, but there are just companies in the space that I respect and value enough that I think that the people, the culture, the atmosphere, the mission statement, the way they are handling themselves is so incredibly impressive that to have that opportunity put on my plate, I would be a fool not to take it. And like I said already, Gamefound was one of those companies, is one of those companies. And the combination of that, it's not just that on its own. Next question is, okay, great, now I have an opportunity, but what can I actually do with that? Do I think I can add value? Do I think I can actually do something? Why am I actually interested in this? It is another job. It is another commitment. It's another obligation. It's another chunk and commitment of time that I will have to deal with, because I will not take a job that I do not think I'm going to be able to handle to the best of my abilities. And when it comes to Gamefound, I want to make a difference. I think it's incredibly cool, the opportunity on the table as far as being able to make a difference in the crowdfunding space. Again, I spent the past 3 years of my life now talking about crowdfunding, being involved in crowdfunding, being invested in crowdfunding, and I know, selfishly, personally, I know the feeling that I get when I make a difference. I know board games that I have been involved in the feedback around them and how they've made a small change, a small iteration, an adjustment to the rules, the processes, whatever they did. I know games that have made changes based on my feedback and that already feels impactful. Could be it's for worse instead of for better, but it's impactful to feel like you saw something and you managed to make it better for yourself, and hopefully you made it better for other people as well. It is a very powerful feeling, and that's what I'm talking about, a singular board game amongst who knows how many board games that you may not play, games that you might touch, you may never touch again, any number of things. But it still manages to feel very powerful to make a difference in a space you care about. And make no mistake, board games are very much a space I care about. And to take that feeling and to expound it to crowdfunding, which is, again, a space I've been involved with for a long time now, and the idea that I can make a difference in things more than just commentary on the space in general, but rather being involved in the actual decisions around how to make crowdfunding as good as it can be, how we can approach different problems and challenges. And make no mistake, right now is a point of challenges within crowdfunding. With everything going on with the state of the world, with the nature of increased prices, with the nature of increased freight, with all these different conversations, crowdfunding is definitely in a state where the concept of challenges is very present. And I think it would be very exciting, personally, selfishly, I think it's very exciting for me to be able to have an opportunity to be a voice in that space. A voice past what I've been doing till now, but more in the actual realm of action. To have action in the space more than a voice. To be involved with ways that we can change things as much as possible, to improve things as much as possible, to add features where features can be added, to tackle conversations that are difficult about how crowdfunding could be done better, differently, in some way, to add reasons for the backers, for the creators, to just, I think it is such a cool opportunity for me it's a cool opportunity for me. That's what it comes down to. I think I can be impactful, and I want to be impactful. I don't know a lot about what the future brings, but it's very exciting for me to be able to be an impact on the space that I love. As far as how this will affect content on the channel, because that's something we should definitely talk about, because there is inherent conflict of interest being added here, conflict of interest that wasn't as present, and possibly a little present. For those who know, Gamefound has been a channel sponsor at times. They've sponsored occasional videos here and there, and that means this conflict between Gamefound and myself has already existed, but this introduces a new form and a stronger form, and there will be ways that has to be addressed. There will inherently be conflict of interest that I will navigate as best I can, and that you'll have to make decisions on your end as well as far as what you want to do or how you want to take the content that I put out. As a starting baseline, any Awakened Realms titles of any kind will get disclaimers left, right, and center if they even have an actual review attached to them. Awakened Realms, for context, has some degree of attachment to Gamefound, not an actual attachment, just shared ownership in the back end, but there is that degree of conflict, and so if I ever review an Awakened Realms title, an Awakened Realms light title, you can absolutely expect to see disclaimers, and likely not an official score. Maybe thoughts, coverage in some way, shape, and form, I don't know. It is also possible I don't cover their games, although selfishly I do. I've generally liked most Awakened Realms titles, and so I want to talk about their games, but we'll navigate that and we'll figure it out. At the very least, there'll be disclaimers. Most likely there will not be a score. Whether I talk about them at all in an opinionated fashion, we'll see. We'll cross that bridge as we come to it, but for sure the disclaimer part, you'll have left, right, and center on that. There's inherently a conflict of interest. It is impossible for me to now say, hey, this Awakened Realms title is terrible. It's just, it would be very, very hard for me to say that. And so I'd probably not cover it at all in such a context, but we'll figure it out. We'll navigate this. But that conflict I'm very present of. I'm very aware of that conflict, and we'll have to deal with it as it comes up. There's also the nature of covering games on crowdfunding, because that also introduces a degree of conflict of interest between myself, between Gamefound, between Awakened Realms, and even the companies on Gamefound. For those who don't know, every single Monday I do a to back or not to back video, and in those videos I talk about the nature of the projects themselves, my opinions on the projects, my interest in the gameplay, but also whether I think it makes sense to back things or not to back things, and that inherently is a bit trickier when it comes to a project on Gamefound. Not just a project on Gamefound, but a project on Gamefound that I may have been involved with the creator in bringing them to Gamefound. It's a weird conflict. It's a weird backstory to be like, hey, by the way, you should totally use Gamefound as your platform of choice. By the way, a week later, there's going to be a video saying where I think you should not back this game, and that does introduce a degree of conflict. To be very clear, I will never tell you to back a game that I don't think is worth backing, but it might mean that when it comes to Gamefound titles, I leave off an opinion about whether you should or shouldn't back it. That might be something that I have to navigate. Again, we'll figure that out. It will likely come with disclaimers as well. As, hey, by the way, to back, not to back, just as a note, I work for Gamefound, so take that into account when I cover any Gamefound-related projects. Although, practically speaking, you should probably take into account when I cover any Kickstarter-related projects. The very nature of the conversation is that Gamefound is the company I work for, but Kickstarter and BackerKit are now the companies I don't. Which previously I didn't before, but it's a different context and a different conversation. So disclaimers will still be there when we cover, crowd-funded titles and to back or not to back, and going over that every single week. And it will be something we have to navigate. It will be something I have to navigate. My goal in general, my goal always is to always provide value-added content, to talk about things in a way that add value to the space, to add value to yourself, to give you a reason to keep coming back to, whether it's an opinion on the board games, whether it's, talking about crowdfunding, whether it's a top 10 list of the best games I've played, whatever it is, all the various forms of content I do, and I have so many different forms of content I do on this channel. But inherently there is an extra degree of conflict of interest, a conflict of interest that I will try to navigate as best as possible, and my goal is that you should walk away with information that is still useful, relevant, helpful, and I won't say not biased, but as least biased as possible, and giving you the tools to make that decision and judgment call. It'll also have an impact on the nature of industry-related news that I do on this channel. That's almost inherent as well, but the very nature of covering industry-related pieces, of whatever drama is going on in the board game space, is there's different kinds of conversations that can be had. There's conversations around a specific company, around what they're doing, how they're doing it, what kind of drama they're going through, and those things will be less present here. Again, the very nature of this conversation is that now any company is either in some way associated with Gamefound, or they may often not be associated with Gamefound. Either way, it's kind of that new binary choice. If I talk about a company that works with Gamefound, that could be tricky. I could have insider information. I could have conflicts of interest. If I talk about a company that doesn't work with Gamefound, then am I only willing to be negative about companies that don't work with Gamefound? It's a weird conflict, and it's one that I'll be trying to navigate as best as possible. But I think the net result of it is that specific conversations around specific companies and the dramas they're currently going through, expect to see less or none of those as time goes on. Whereas conversations around the board game space, those you should expect to see just as much of, if not more, because of the nature of what I'm doing. And again, to be very clear, inherently, any conversation, any topic, any subject that I am now walking into it with different information, with different perspectives, with insider information, with a context of behind the scenes, because I'm working with creators, I'm seeing different things, it does mean those things will not happen. It does mean those conversations represent a conflict of interest. I can't possibly be someone talking to companies about the things they're going through, and then at the same time having them worry about the nature of what's making its way to Board Game Co's YouTube content it just changes who I am. It changes who I am, not who I am. That sounds worse. It changes who I am as far as what perspective I can have. I can't just have the perspective of somebody in the board game space commenting it the way I see things. Now I'm having the perspective of someone who's commenting it with insider information, with things behind the scene, and a degree of impossible to separate knowledge of what I would have said versus what I actually know. And again, my goal is to still have as much industry coverage as possible, because I think that's valuable. I think it's helpful, and I think it's very useful to have that kind of conversation and information around, and I'll still have that. But it'll just change the format. Now it'll be more things I've already started doing more recently. You can still expect to see conversations and interviews with other companies in the board game space, having a conversation with them around what's going on. I think that stuff is useful. To this day, my interview with Chip Theory Games, with Josh Wilgus with Chip Theory Games, about the nature of shipping is one of my favorite videos I've done on the channel. I felt it was incredibly instructional, informational. I thought it was helpful. I thought it was entertaining. I liked it a lot. From all the interviews I've done, it may have been my favorite. No disrespect to any of the other interviews I've done. But I want to do more stuff like that. I want to add value to the board game space as much as possible. You can also expect to see Gamefound, kind of like almost like a Gamefound perspective of things. The very nature of me working for Gamefound means I might have more industry pieces, but from a general Gamefound conversational nature around things. The goal always still being to entertain. Like one of the things is fascinating. If you haven't been doing this yet, Marcin from Gamefound from Awakened Realms does I believe every Monday does a live stream over on Facebook where he just talks to the people, and I love that. I love that degree of access, that community, that sense of working with people, of working with the backers, of not trying to present a face to the public that blocks you from the public, but rather trying to present a face to the public that connects you with the public. And that goal, that role will be more filled by what I'm doing here. It does mean that I'll be walking into some degrees of conversational things around, maybe a conversation around the shipping in the board game space, but from the stance of a perspective of Gamefound, from the way we see things, the way we believe things can be handled or should be handled or whatnot. It changes the nature of how I approach industry-related news. It cuts off some degrees of what I can do just because of that conflict, but it opens up many other doors of what value I can add and conversations I can add in different ways. On a separate, semi-related note, it does mean that I might be dropping down a few videos a week. Not extensively. For context, for those who don't know, I have a lot of videos I do every single week. A significant amount of videos I do on this main channel. I believe I want to say 12 videos a week. 12 videos sounds right. I do one video every day. I currently do 2 extra on Saturday and on Tuesday. That brings us to 11, and then I do another live stream on Wednesday. I'm currently at 12 videos a week on the main channel. I additionally, over on Quack & Co., another channel I do together with Jesse from Quackalope, I have 3.5 videos a week on average. We alternate days over there, so 3.5 videos a week. We'll call that 3. That brings us to 15 videos right there. On Patreon, currently, I have 2 videos a week I do over on Patreon. One general conversation around Kickstarter and crowdfunding projects and trying to convince you not to back them, that goes up every Monday, trying to specifically convince you not to back them. And then as well as that, a video that goes on in general behind the scenes, and that's going to be 2 videos there. That brings us to 17 videos. Over on Twitch, I've been streaming over on Camp Co-op. Again, links to all the stuff down below. I've started streaming there when I left my last job, and we're currently at 3 streams a week, so that brings us to what, 15 to 18 videos a week. Is that 18 videos? We're at 18 videos a week. That's a decent amount of video content I put out every single week. It's a lot of video content, wow. And my goal is to, in some small way, reduce that. Small way, a very small way. Like I plan on potentially cutting out 1 Tuesday and 1 Saturday review. Lowering the amount of reviews I'm doing from 3 to 5. I currently do like around 4 to 5 reviews a week, and I'm lowering it to 2 to 3 reviews a week. Which saves you more time than the 2 videos, because it saves you all the time spent playing those games, to diving into those games multiple times, to drafting the notes, to filming everything, setting up, tearing down. That saves me a decent amount of time, even just shaving off those 2 videos a week. And so my current game plan is to potentially drop the amount of video content I do from like the 18 total videos to like 16, because I need to start slacking off in some way. And that will happen as well. There'll be another conversation that we might do on a different video in the future, but I likely will be looking into bringing some degree of help with the channel. Not a major change, not a major shift, but potentially some background help with things like thumbnails, with timestamps, with some extra things that can be done. Possibly people stepping in to fill those videos a week, to bring them back up. Maybe more gameplays or first impressions to fill those spots. Even as I speak, I don't really want to cut those videos out, but we'll see. We'll see what we can do. I'll try to be responsible and actually cut down to a little bit. But I always want to do more. I don't want to do less. I always want to do more, but I also have to be responsible at what I take on, what I put on my plate, and I think there's a lot going on, and it'll be very interesting. Like when I left my last job, I filled that time as much as possible by adding more things, by adding in more live content. Between Twitch and between the main channel, I added in 4 live streams a week, and live content really takes it out of you, by the way. In a weird way, live content, I find, takes much more work, effort, and attention than doing a recorded video. It is a lot, and it's more stressful, but it is enjoyable in many different ways. But there will be those degrees of adjustments or changes to the channel, to the conflicts, to the content in different ways. This entire thing is going to be a balance. This entire thing is going to be an interesting balance that I try to navigate, being both Board Game Co, because it still very much is Board Game Co. To be very clear, Gamefound has no real say over what happens on this channel past the very nature of me understanding the nature of conflict of interest and how to avoid and mitigate those as much as possible. And I understand and acknowledge that you will have to decide ultimately. I'll have to decide what I'm willing to say from the nature of conflict of interest, and the answer is if it's a conflict of interest, I'm going to be mindful of it. But in your end, you'll also have to decide what you're willing to take or listen. The nature of reviewing games. Reviewing games even is a conversation that we haven't really dived into, but can I review a game for a game that's on Gamefound? Will my opinion be tainted? Possibly. My goal is not. My goal is that if project creators working with us with Gamefound and they also want to work with me as a reviewer, I'm going to make it very clear to them the nature of my two roles, the nature of Board Game Co, the person who covers the game industry, the board games, all those things, talks about the board games, the opinions, the top 10 lists, whatever it is, and the nature of me working for Gamefound. And if they still want to engage with me, that's their choice to make. Can I be unbiased? That's your decision to make. I don't think that would be enough of a bias for me, but you'll have to make those judgment calls based on the content you see, based on the way I've been until now, based on the way I continue to be. You will have to make those judgment calls. I absolutely respect it. I'll make the judgment calls about what I'm able to do and willing to do, and you'll make the judgment calls about whether you still care about those things or not. It will be a balance. I think that overall, Gamefound will open up more doors, more opportunities. I think it'll be very interesting and very helpful to both myself personally as well as to Board Game Co, the channel, although it is going to come with a degree of navigation along the way. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be very interesting, and I'm very excited for the opportunity. I'm very excited for the opportunity that you all have afforded me. And I say you all genuinely. From that first video 3 years ago, from that first Hello World where I just held up my cell phone camera, turned around this room, looked at the various board games on the shelf, and just talked to you and said hi for a few times, to the next few videos that slowly, one at a time, came out. This has been a very interesting journey and a path for me. One that I'm very grateful for and have continued to be very grateful for. And this is a new step along that path. This is a new step forward in a new and different way, with new opportunities in front of me, with new challenges to navigate, with overall just a huge degree of personal excitement on my end. And it's all because of you. It could not have happened if this channel weren't where it is. And I'm grateful to every single one of you. I'm grateful to those who this is your very first video on the channel, in which case, welcome to Board Game Co. I talk about my life a lot. It's not just about board games here. It's everything and anything that I possibly could do. I enjoy the conversation. Or whether you've been here since day one, watching me slowly and ah my way through my first 17 videos. A lot less energy. Possibly a drop more clarity, but who really knows? It's been a very long journey. Not that long in the scheme of things, but it's been almost 3 years now. December 2019 was when I first put up my first video. We're closing in on 3 years now, and the past 3 years have brought a roller coaster of opportunities, of things I never thought could or would happen. To this day, I remember telling my wife way back when I first started that it would be super cool if I could, if I could somehow get, a small, part-time income from just being involved in board games and YouTube. That would be super cool for me. And I've come a long way since then. With your help, with your support. And it's very much appreciated. And speaking of which, this is not meant to be a Patreon push. It's almost the other way if we talk about it. But to address Patreon and support in that sense. Because right now, for those who don't know, the way I've funded myself until now has effectively been a combination of YouTube ad revenue, of YouTube just paying me for views, and then Patreon support. A drop of sponsorships here and there, a board game table, Gamefound, different things like that, but YouTube support and Patreon has been the primary way I've been supporting myself and this channel, the way I was able to leave my last job and to walk into this nervous and afraid, but with the degree of opportunity in front of me. And when I left my last job, I did put out a big Patreon push video, saying, hey, if you've appreciated this content, if you've enjoyed this content, if you've enjoyed my channel, it would be appreciated if you can help me as I walk into a degree of financial unknown. And to be very clear, if you are someone that has supported me since then or because of that, And especially if money's tight. Like if you get value from the content, if you support me on Patreon now, or if you want to start supporting me on Patreon because you get value from the content, it is tremendously appreciated. It is helpful. It is helpful, especially now. It's going to be helpful as well as I try to focus on how to bring people into the channel in a way that may not make sense from a pure YouTube financial aspect, but in a way that I think with this opportunity with Gamefound, I want to start investing in the channel and Board Game Co in a different way. But whether you are a current supporter or going to become a supporter, any of that is greatly appreciated. But also, if you're someone who only went out on a limb because I was in a state of need, then for full transparency's sake, this opportunity will take me out of that state of need. And so while I very much appreciate those who start supporting or continue supporting, I absolutely want to make it clear, like, if you need to stop supporting for any reason whatsoever, this does push me out of a degree of financial need and more into a degree of opportunity. A degree of opportunity as to what I can do with the channel, what the next steps I can take on, and how that can all look and shape out to be. But overall, I guess I'll close this video by saying that this is an interesting opportunity, one that I'm very excited for. I'm very excited for what I can do for Gamefound, what Gamefound can do for crowdfunding, and how this space is going to shape up around us over the next 1, 2, 5, 10, 15 years. It's very exciting, and I'm excited to be a part of it. Thank you so much for being here, for watching, from now till whenever. And until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and I hope you have a good one.